Hi again, it's Foxy, and this is a bit different of a video today. I am somewhere that you likely won't recognize, but I didn't feel like playing of the survival world, so I decided to do something different. This is, as I mentioned in a more recent video, the world download of the first server that I hosted with my friends. Since I hosted it, I was able to actually manage to get it on exclusively on backup. So I figured it would be funny and entertaining if I did a walkthrough of the world and everybody's bases and stuff, and just kind of show you the stuff that I made and the stuff that other people made and how cool it all looks. So to start, we actually have the house of the person who started the server. Ghosty Milo, his name was. I linked his video in the last description, and he wanted to get better at building, and this was the first house that he actually ever made. It's quaint, to say the least. He's, as the server owner, he got to have the dragon egg. Well, the server coordinator, I guess. He decided to, or he elected to house the dragon egg. But this was his main house that he kind of worked out of everything, and you may notice that there isn't a whole heck of a lot to look at here until you go to the secret room in the basement. And that's what this all is. This is mostly his workshop area where he did all of his, crafting and keeping all of his enchanted books and storage. And I think this part looks really nice. I'm also playing with a custom-made resource pack that does a couple of slight things, so if textures don't look right, you know why. So, moving on from this, I just figured I'd show off all of the various things that he has. Another thing that I added with the resource pack, but that's all beside the point. This is but one thing that he made over the course of the server's lifespan. Now, I guess moving on from that, we should probably talk about this odd-looking structure here. So, when the server first started, it was like me and maybe about probably like 6 other people, all playing at the same time, and because none of us wanted to actually go off and make our own houses, we just started making this a conglomerate of a house, just about here actually, and it looked terrible, and it was abandoned pretty quickly after. So what I ended up doing, because I took the liberty of it on myself, was to pretty much break every block down and erect a little monument, because we had a nether portal here linking directly to spawn. Unfortunately, the nether doesn't work, so I won't be able to show you the nether side, but honestly, that's not much has been lost on that front. It's, the only stuff that was really missing there was a couple of minecart tracks and other nether portals to various other bases. So it's the crafting table house monument because there was a whole branch of the house that was exclusively made out of crafting tables. I'll see if I can pull up the clip of the video itself, but I think this was a good thing to record, and actually was my first instance of using the replay mod, which I think I might flash up on screen now. Well, yeah, how is that? Pretty amateurish, I'm sure, right? Well, actually, there's a lot of backstory we need to go through here. I'll just ignore some of like the other houses and stuff. I go over Ghosty's because he was kind of the one who orchestrated the whole thing. So, I guess we kind of have him to thank that this even happened. But this bridge was made I actually forget who by, but probably this person, this player's doing, because they, second to myself, probably have the most hours in the game. So actually, no, I'd probably say they were on par with myself, and they had the most amount of hours. This was their house, and this is probably the most detailed house on the server. And they spent a lot of time doing builds and stuff, and I'll actually do a little walkthrough of some of the various other things they made, but this is their little space. They have a lot of twisting and winding rooms, and they're very big Star Wars fans. It's a very nice house, and how professional. In short, they spent a lot of time on the server, and I think they made it a much cooler place to walk around and be in. And this is my recreation of Cafe Blanc from Persona 5 that I mentioned in my house building video, where I essentially recreated the cafe as a cat cafe. Yeah, coffee, cats, and curry, LeBlanc. And tried recreating it to the best of my ability, given the items and blocks we had in Minecraft. This wing didn't exist, and this banner is designed by yours truly. But this was supposed to be a section that I was going to fill up with a bunch of cats and stuff, have them sitting on these little, like, banisters. You know, I looked at a lot of pictures of, like, cat cafes and cat trees in order to figure this one out in a way that would be feasible. And, okay, and tut-tut, Voxy, I actually never finished it because this is supposed to be the living space that Joker, well, this is supposed to be like your hangout or your house that you spend most of your not adventuring time in, but I never ended up finishing it because the server just simply died too quickly. But I'm really happy with how this turned out, and this was mostly put together just out of a desire to make something that I wouldn't have otherwise. Now, let's see if I can remember how to get to this other thing. Here is the second part of the server that I think deserves some mentioning. This was another player's, whose name I'm not going to mention just out of privacy reasons, but this is another player who sunk, I guess, some time into actually planning houses and stuff. This was supposed to be a little rustic village that they had, that they would make, you know, various builds in, you know, just a small little, like, city that you could walk through and experience and see all sorts of cool things. It was supposed to feel very lived in, but obviously they lost interest quite quickly, so all of the houses are more, for the most part, unfinished. This was also supposed to be a little carnival thing that they wanted to do, but it ended up being more of a mob farm, and this was their starter house. Just a little, like, hobbit hole that they were gonna live out of for a little bit. That's probably not the greatest example. This was their farm and their animal pens, which I think were the most impressive parts of well, I shouldn't say the most impressive parts, but this is the second most eye-catching thing next to the actual town itself, being just, you know, a really big farm and very vibrant sheeps and a lot of cows and animals, and I guess this is where they farmed their spruce trees, but this is actually where they did their, like, living out of. This was their main hobbit hole. We also added in the data pack to add in mob head drops as part of their loot table, as well as player head drops, but I'm sure you probably could have figured that out given the plethora of Mandalorian heads that you've seen just kind of dotted about the server, and will likely continue to see dotted about the server. As you can see, they have pretty much everything they need here to properly survive and stuff, and I believe this was this was part of the lore that never ended up, well, concluding into, I guess, a next arc or something, or a new server, or really however it was going to have ended. But moving on, I guess we can probably move over to my little area, which is just west of here, wherever the moon is pointing. It's actually a little over the water and back. So I should mention, before I get to my part, this was also a production of Ghosty Milo's. This was made when he was probably the most vocal about his enjoyment for pirate stuff. He made this just a little off the coast of my area over here, which I'm getting to now. Yeah. This server was hosted during the Nether update, so this was certainly before caves and cliffs were added. So all of these stone blocks were custom made, or not custom made, but hand placed pretty much from here up. And then next to it is my little workshop observatory combo thing. I originally wanted to have like a super smelter set up here. Oh, hello. I originally wanted to have a super smelter set up and frame it like it's supposed to be a diesel generator powering the whole workshop. I didn't actually end up outfitting it with any machines, but I think this is probably some of my best work on this server. I'm absolutely in love with the floor design that I picked for this. I just think it pairs really well with how the rest of the build looks, and actually deciding to texture the walls a little spottily. This I believe could use some work, but I also really like how I did this spiral staircase all the way up. It doesn't feel very cumbersome to walk up, and then the actual telescope itself, oh. Last I remember, there was a diamond block here. Maybe I was going to get to that. Nope. This was a good area that I spent a lot of time in, just building these cool railways between the two. We have other more impressive things to get to. For starters, this was my starter house. I just threw this together over the course of one day when school was out on account of COVID. So I was actually in the middle of online school and sitting there and just making the foundation for this house, and there's my old player head, how far they've come. And here was my main storage that I could give you a walkthrough of the chest, but honestly that seems kind of silly, so I'll just tell you that this was the enchanting room, and then here was the kind of everything else room that I never ended up getting around to decorating. Moving on, I can show you that in time for the Christmas season, we ended up making a little Christmas get-together, placing some wool and leaves under a little Christmas tree, and then having a little secret Santa. This was a fun little get-together, and it was a little Christmas special, even on Ghosty Milo's channel. So what a fun way to bring back the festive spirit, and for whatever reason I never decided to take it down. And on the subject of things I never decided to take down, this thing, really honestly couldn't tell you why or when this came up. It was just there one day, and I never decided to take it down because I thought it was kind of funny. Actually, moving on from the house itself is the walk over to my little kingdom area that I was talking about at the end of the last video I recorded. This was the structure I decided to make for my nether portal. Walking into a hollow tree, and then on the nether side, which unfortunately has been lost to time, was a cool looking mushroom that you would also walk out of, and it would kind of look like you're walking into the tree and then walking out of a big mushroom. And I thought that was a really cool way to do that, and I'll probably end up doing something like that on my survival world, because I've always liked the idea of walking through a portal and then walking out into a more like twisted version of the entrance. But welcome to the kind of underwhelming area of Ortu Soli, as I called it back then. Those old banners that I was talking about and you saw in the Café Blanc have been upscaled here into these more regal looking banners across the whole side. And admittedly, this castle design kind of stinks. I'm not the biggest fan of it now. At the time, I was absolutely blown away that I was able to make something like this. So walking in from the front door itself is this was all of my stuff that I had on me. When I last logged off the server, I figured it would be a good representation of just what I had as a had on me, so that I wouldn't accidentally, survival, destroy item, clear everything. This is the map of my little area. As you can see, Ortu Soli Castle, Latin for, I believe, rising sun. You might have noticed it, but I actually decided to build a big old compass in the corner of the map, pointing north, because I thought it would just look really cool. And you know what? I'm right, that does look cool. Though nowadays I probably would put the banner at the top of it rather than the center, but oh well. Here was my main dining hall that I decided to build because I had a bunch of unused space. Originally this was supposed to be like a walkway upstairs, but I guess I never ended up getting around to that. And there's that banner from earlier. Oh, and here's like the main throne that I would sit at. And this is Letterman, my Enderman companion who would sit with me. Shaders don't really look right with resource packs that I had installed, but this was my Enderman, I guess, butler, for lack of... Yeah, butler was the word I used, who was just kind of here one day and never decided to leave, so I gave him a little boat and made him sit next to me, and it was really cool and nice. Annoyingly, though, Letterman was kind of inconveniently placed for reasons that I'm going to show you very shortly. Or rather, the product of poor planning on my part, because right behind this wall is where Letterman is. Yep, there he is. And this is where my bed was. And I can't sleep because Letterman's so close in this bed, but I can sleep in this bed. Is what I would say if they let me... What? I could have sworn that I wasn't able to... Oh, whatever. Oh, and here was my desk that I decided to build. Looking back, this kind of sucks. But inside, we'll get to the lore. Wrapping up with my little area is actually the basement part of the mansion castle thing, rounding out with this big mosaic hall, which I imagine to be some sort of ballroom, which I'm really proud with how I did it, utilizing the smooth sandstone and warped combination. I really like how I did this floor, how it's kind of like symmetrical along the center here. And as random as it looks, there is some kind of like, it's almost beautiful in a way. Well, I think it's very pretty, but we also had a data pack that would let me place whole images along rows of item frames, and I had a big rendition of myself as like a king at the time. Just posted there, and so you would walk down the stairs and you would see this big portrait of myself, and I thought it was really cool, leaning into the whole like royalty aesthetic. So all of these houses down here are more or less unfurnished, with the exception of one, because I kind of wanted these houses to be like little home away from homes. As you can see, one player decided to actually set up shop down here, and I actually had a little interconnected sewer system between, well, the outside and all of the people's houses, and then the exit side of the whole thing. However, there is one component of the whole sewer system that I was setting up for another plot point, and it was right here. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that this is very clearly supposed to open somehow. So, breaking the immersion a little bit. This is supposed to, or this is set to open at, I believe, like midnight every night. So you're supposed to go down here and, swim your way all the way down. And eventually you'll come across the main crux of the build, or not the main crux, but the secondary feature of the build, which is what I framed to be the older kingdom of Ortusoli, found exclusively underground. And this is where I got most of the, actually I think all of the stone for the mountain ranges. I had a lot of overlapping ideas that I wanted to take care of and handle, because eventually I wanted to make content on this server when it was still running, and, well, I mean, I guess I kind of am, but I didn't actually have much of a plan for most of these. I don't even know if you want to call them houses. I didn't really have much of a rhyme or reason for putting things where I did, and lit the place to a good degree. Nowadays, I'd probably see how I could hide this somehow, or like integrate it better, but this was supposed to be a temporary setup and something I would work on for a lot longer. But here comes the main point of the lore. I was trying to make this big eye structure, and at the time this was made before the Caves and Glyphs update, so this was actually all bedrock, and I wanted to make it seem like that this was at like the bottom of the world, or somehow have a way to make this all void so that it looks like this is a very otherworldly kind of thing. I can give you the story of the lore that I wanted to make for the server, but actually I should probably do that after I get to the first plot point of the server. I'm jumping around so much. So, actually returning back to this area, there was one part that you probably saw that I completely neglected to mention, but this was supposed to be the area of, baby chickie, as they were called. It was an egg that someone haphazardly threw and spawned in a baby chicken that, for one reason or another, became, a pseudo-overlord of the server. So they were originally strung to this lead and hung up here. They were beginning to become like a sort of tyrant on the server. Nothing was actually done, but they were setting themselves up to be a very imposing figure with a guillotine and everything. And this was the part where lore started getting integrated, because one of the players, this player here, was sent up to be executed, and Ghosty Milo, watching from, I believe, around here, or maybe even at the front, so utterly shocked and appalled that he was setting up to overthrow Baby Chicky somehow, and originally had this big plan to do it, but was going to eventually reveal it piece by piece, and that never ended up happening because just north of spawn a little bit is the base of another player who decided to leave this space for totally justifiable reasons. Posted right here was an item frame with the first ingot of netherite on the server, and need I remind you, this was the update where netherite was added, so netherite was a big deal. I thought it would be a funny prank to take the first netherite and put it in just like a loose barrel somewhere and replace it with a nether brick. I didn't steal it. Well, I didn't steal it for myself. I stole it to play just an innocent prank. And how this player responded was by kidnapping the chicken and hiding them somewhere, and only a place that they knew about. It eventually devolved into this whole scramble for people trying to figure out like where the chicken was, and they just never told anyone about it. So eventually they forgot, actually. It wouldn't be until I started, poking and prodding after the server had died that I would actually find out that the chicken is just under this hill for some reason. There isn't like any elaborate game or anything. This is them. This is the chicken. This is the chicken in question. Not so baby now, but this is the chicken that started all of the lore on the server. And it was just an ominous screenshot taken just about like this that sent the whole server pretty much into a spiral of, where'd the chicken go? Where'd the chicken go? That really invigorated people's, I guess, creative spirits a bit, until this player just stopped caring Nothing actually ended up coming of that. All this to say, Baby Chicky was hyping itself up to be this big, imposing threat that never ended up coming to fruition. Now, back to what I was talking about with my lore points. Now, as I was saying, recap of previous log. I wish to create a nation to rival that of the tyrannical rule of Baby Chicky, an entity whom I have reason to believe is an otherworldly being, potentially a cryptid or SCP, whom has yet to wholly prove themselves as an evil entity. I intend to recruit Decent _ to the rebellion against the Poultry Monarch. He, however, has taken matters into his own hands as he has kidnapped the leader. I intend to recruit Decent _ to the rebellion against the Poultry Monarch. He, however, has taken matters into his own hands as he has kidnapped the leader. In my quest to build my nation, I found myself an unlikely ally by the name of Letterman, who could be considered the first resident of Otru-Soli, Land of Rising Sun, with Fraser being the second. End of recap. March 10th, 2021. I have finished construction of the dueling mountains that my nation will rest upon. I also have discovered a cavern deep below the sewer system of the inner town. Further investigation will need to be taken on this mysterious cavern. Michael also found himself in the position of an organization which intends to overthrow the chicken. I want in. I'm sure there will be ample opportunity to enter the resistance in due time. Oh yeah, I found a maid dress. I don't really have much of an excuse for that one. I think I just put my skin in a maid dress at this point. March 14th, 2021. I am making great progress with my ballroom. However, I find myself in need of clay in order to make the mosaic floor that would make the ballroom stand out. I truly believe that I am truly the richest person on the server. Decent _ is a close second in my wake, as I expect him to be. May 3rd, 2021. The nation has entered a state of dormancy that I believe will lead to its inevitable downfall. On a lighter note, renovations on my castle will continue as anticipated and therefore will most likely be done in the coming days. In regards to the caverns below the town, I have found a matter to be most fascinating. In the caverns under my village lies a society long since destroyed. The state it is in rather well kept, as though its denizens abandoned the town. May 17th, 2021. I have reason to believe that there is an entity within the village that caused the denizens of the town to disappear. I have found an entity within the caves that appears to hold tremendous power. I believe this could prove useful against the chicken. June 3rd, 2021. I haven't slept in days. My research has led me to have more questions about the world's origin and our overall purpose than I had started with. My insomniac tendencies have been spurred by visions I have been having once I fall asleep. Though I cannot rule them out as being dreams, they feel increasingly more vivid the more I have them. I've been having this recurring dream where I feel every aspect of my life being reset. Age, status, my life, all set back to zero. I feel as though there is more to this world than we once thought, and this entity may provide insight as to what. June 4th, 2021. It communicated with me. It somehow managed to telepathically communicate with me, though it spoke in a tongue much more different than English. I feel the village may prove to solve this answer. June 5th, 2021. I've got it. The entity is an eye. What I've been seeing in my sleep are most definitely not dreams. They're parallel universes. The eye has told me that it has dark intentions for this world. It kept repeating the whole number 7. I'm not wholly sure what that means. However, I can be most certain that it is not good. So, when I originally wrote that, I actually had the thought of closing down the server after this whole arc had ended and restarting a new server. This time maybe with mods or just a different season or a new seed, new things, new something different about it. But maybe with the constant of there being another tyrannical ruler or something that would kind of keep a through line from this server to the next. Unfortunately, that ended up falling through just because there wasn't really anything to, go off of. But as I was saying, this blimp here was supposed to be a totally harmless and otherwise innocuous blimp that would have no ulterior motives whatsoever and was completely unrelated to the rise and rulings of Baby Chicky. This was just another player's house, just a 3x3 piston door that they used. At the top here was their little grill area, and I remember the server hosting a little potluck one day, and I thought it would be funny to make a big pot at the top, bringing the pot to the potluck. Not one of my funnier jokes, I know. I guess wrapping up with the server tour itself, and there are other things that I've absolutely missed. Can't really express all of them without just walking over to people's houses and going, this is this person's house, and this is where they'd spent most of their time, because that's really all I can say. Over here is the server zoo, sanctioned off into various different mobs. We have kind of the passive mob exhibits at the front here, starting off with, your foxes and your bees. Yeah, your wolves. Just a plethora of harmless mobs that are kind of cute and a nice introduction. This was the aquatic area. This is where they put all of their various fishes. Your cods, your salmons, your tropical fish. I believe they didn't put pufferfish in here just because they can poison the other fish. So I forget if they had their own exhibit or not. I thought this part was really cool, but maybe I'm just a sucker for, fish and aquariums. I just really like the glass overhang and being able to walk, kind of through the ocean there. This was the little, swimming area that they could, please do not eat the fish, no peeing allowed. This is where they put a bunch of tropical fish, probably gotten from, the only place they could have gotten them at this point was Warm Oceans, because Lush Caves didn't exist yet, so there wasn't a way to, farm them, quote unquote. This area was the pride and joy of the owners. This was their village exhibit containing a Ravager, which at the time was, even now it is kind of an annoying thing to get. I forget what they decided to name them. Stronker, and a sweetheart he is. This blew my mind when they originally managed to move an entire villager down to here and replicate the houses, for enrichment. So it kind of gives the impression that the Ravagers, terrorizing the town. I'm not sure why they decided to build the small little, Baby Yoda. I think it was just because one of the players wanted to build it. I believe there were some unfinished exhibits here, they never got around to having an enclosure area, but another bee exhibit, cute. And then there's this. This is the this isn't supposed to be a farm or a ranch or anything, but it's supposed to be a stable for racing animals, because they have this funny little track here that they were gonna have little setup races for. So you would just kind of run around the track, you against some of the other people on the server, and I thought that was a really cool idea. I believe they were mostly inspired by Disneyland and Disney World kind of styled of builds and stuff. So this was the cafe that never ended up getting an interior. Again, not a bash on anybody who built this. You saw what I made, and very commonly did it not have any interiors and stuff too. So this is where they housed all their parrots. Since I don't own any of them, they can't ride on my shoulders. Oh, right, yeah. There's supposed to be a path that you can follow through the whole thing, and you'll hit every exhibit. This was their panda exhibit, which tried, and I believe succeeded, getting every type of panda that there is, including even the rare brown one. There's that, and then the ocelots. I'm not sure why Jimmy Woo pops up so regularly. And also the polar bear exhibit. How could I forget? There's another one too that seems to be escaping me. Oh, here it is. Just to the left of the aquarium exhibit is their hostile mob enclosures. So inside here we're supposed to be zombies and skeletons and creepers and stuff, but maybe through one reason or another they all despawned, I think this is where the creeper was supposed to go. For one reason or another, I think they all despawned, or the server went to peaceful mode or something. and it was just kind of too much of a hassle to keep them enclosed like this. And finally comes the gift shop, truly the end-all be-all of any zoo experience. So they have a bunch of mob heads that you would spend maybe various diamonds on. I forget specifically what the prices were, but I can't imagine it be much more than like a diamond per, or like food and snacks to, not snacks, but ways to agitate the mobs to get them to run around or something. Kind of cruel when actually I phrase it like that. Regardless, there's various player, quote-unquote player heads. They didn't actually go out and kill all these Ravagers. I believe someone just changed their skin and was just killed over and over and over again. Actually, yeah, that's exactly what it was, because this player, since their head was dotted about everywhere so frequently, they actually made it an informal goal of theirs to get their death count to 1,000, because that was another thing that the server had, which, you know, if you held tab, you would see how many times that a player had died. Since this isn't the original world, but just a world download, it's, my number is at 1, but I believe it was about, like, 60 by the time that the server had ended. And with that, I believe the server tour is mostly concluded, so hi again. So, that is the end of the server tour, and I just figured I should mention, if you've made it this far, that you should probably like the video, comment what you liked and what you didn't about it, and subscribe if you really liked the stuff that I did and the commentary I gave. With that, I believe that this is the end of the video, so like I've said before, thank you for listening to me yammer about this game that I enjoy.